Hi, how are you? All is well? Right. Thank you so much for making time and joining us right here on In Focus. Really great to be here one more time. Of course, the year is slowly coming to an end. If you had resolutions and you haven't met them, hey, you have really few days to go. Less than actually 10 to Christmas, about that, and probably the New Year is also around the corner. And so we make sure that we push the envelope harder and reach our New Year resolutions that we actually made beginning of this year. Now, that's not the topic of discussion tonight in Focus, obviously. We're here to talk about a very important matter, and that is the East African community integration process. Should we worry about the state and the future of EAC integration? This looking at the current state of affairs when it comes to the things we've seen, the statements we've seen, letters flying here and there on media. Should we worry? That's the question we've been asking you throughout the day, and you've been actually sending your tweets and thoughts. As always, my name is Eugene Nangwe. Definitely, let's quickly take a look at some of the tweets that have been coming through on this particular issue. One of them is from Havimana Jean-Pierre, who says, I do consider the East African community heads of states as linchpin of successful and fruitful integration to their citizens. I therefore recommend the new heads of states to think about a good legacy and let alone their citizens' interests prevail over their own. This is what he feels that probably the leaders at the top notch are the problem when it comes to this integration issue. Rutaisire R. Moses says that I think it has become more of East African conflict of interests, not community. Not my words. Rutaisire, thank you for that tweet. Always add the hashtag InFocusRW. This is a tweet from Honorable Abdikadir Eden. He's actually a current member of Parliament of the East African Legislative Assembly, former legislator in Kenya. He has taken his time to actually tweet this, and he was actually responding to this earlier tweet where we'd asked, in your opinion, do you feel that EAC leaders have sort of lost the momentum that once existed on matters East African community integration process? And this is his thought on that. Admittedly, there are emerging challenges in the EAC. Going by the flying correspondences between members of the summit, the upcoming heads of states meeting on 27th is crucial and must set the record straight and put the great progress of the EAC integration back on track. So there's seemingly an agreement that we've sort of lost momentum from the top right there. Noari Desire says that, my opinion is the EAC integration is an artificial integration. Members are not able to touch the real realities of the EAC based on each one's interests. Fruits of the integration does not benefit citizens. That's lack of common vision, lack of leadership. And finally, or last but not least, Ambassador Olivier Nduhunjire has actually also taken his time and tweeted, particularly saying that the main challenge today for the integration project within his East African community, this is Jumia, is actually the EAC Twitter handle, is more than the simple lack of political will. It's rather the lack of leadership. We've always been hearing people saying there's no political will. But for him, he says, it's just lack of leadership. This is aggravated by the fact that according to our treaty, it makes 6 to tango. Not 4, not 5, but 6. There's been a letter that actually is going on or going around between these two leaders of the EAC. We'll take some time and talk about it. Let me introduce our panelists. Right now, we have none other than Dr. Christopher Kayumba, not new on the program, scholar and columnist and also analyst. Thank you for joining us on the program, Professor. Also with us is actually wearing for the weather. And of course, he makes it look like an Igwe session. Sir Ken Agutamba, Chief Strategist, ICS. Thank you for joining us on the program. Also, our teams will definitely let us know if we already have Wanyama Masinde, who'll join us on Skype all the way from Nairobi, Kenya. He's a professor of regional integration. And of course, he's from the Center for Regional Integration. We'll be able to allow him to join us on the program via Skype from Kenya once our technical team have him. Let's just get back here in studio and talk a bit about this. The East African community is actually considered as one of the fastest growing regional economic blocs in the world. And we've seen, the doubling of the GDP, we've seen it being pointed out as one of the models for integration. And here we are, Professor, I'll start with you. People feeling worried that, A, things are not looking as sharp as we're seeing in these reports that are throwing flowers at this integration process. Your quick take on this.
Yeah, you're right. On the economic front, East African community is doing well. But of course, what worries many people is because on the political and security front, things have not been moving on well. And of course, as you know, you might have the economy right, but if you don't have politics right, then you are in trouble. And if you don't even have security right, you are in trouble. So what is worrying people is, especially as you were mentioning in your introductory remarks, what happened recently. Number one, you remember the East African heads of state were supposed to meet on November 30th.
Yeah.
They didn't meet. That would not have worried people. But what worried most observers is that three heads of state traveled to Arusha.
Including a chairman of the African Union Commission.
Including the Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta and the President of Tanzania. On reaching there, they announced that the meeting would not take place. Why? We came to know that because the EAC announced that because Burundi did not show up. Because the Rwandan delegation and the South Sudan delegation had not traveled. For the first time in the history of the East African community, both this new one and the old one that was disbanded in 1977, it had never happened that heads of state agree to meet, some of them travel, and the meeting flops. Yeah. So that worried people because it is not every day that a president arranges a meeting, travels, and that meeting does not take place because some members are meeting. So people are worried, therefore they are saying maybe they are not talking. Number two, with that, we also have, again for the first time, as far as I can remember, letters written by heads of state circulating on social media, being written out in newspapers, discussed on radio and TV, where some members of the East African community, like Burundi, is stating clearly that it has a problem with Rwanda.
Yeah, but how is that a bad thing that these letters are being seen on social media today? Because in the past, these things probably would happen behind the scenes, and now people have that power to actually know what's really going on.
The problem is not actual. I think it is a good thing that these letters found their way in the public domain because they are being discussed, and I suppose these leaders will listen.
Yeah.
The problem is what is contained in those letters.
Yeah.
And what is contained in those letters has something to do with the politics of the East African community and the security of this region. Remember, when this problem started in Burundi, in April 2015, it had to do with the internal politics of Burundi. People were protesting against the third term. Yeah. But what we see in this letter, for the first time, Burundi is putting it in writing that the problem it has is with Rwanda. And it is saying it has no internal problem.
Okay.
So that is a major problem.
To talk about that
and again, we see what the chairperson of the East African Community is replying to the Burundi president, saying, bringing out the history of the conflict in Burundi and saying that the East African Community is not intervening and therefore encroaching on the sovereignty of Burundi, but that it has the right to intervene because it is a peace guarantor of the Arusha peace process. So I think what is worrying people, it is that now it has taken a security tone.
Yeah.
That is also in the background of what has been happening in Rwanda, happening in Burundi, happening in Uganda on the security front.
Right. Sagutamba, before we get over to Wanyama, who's ready for us.
I think choosing a frame of analysis that focuses only on Burundi-Rwanda bilateral relations would be missing the bigger picture.
What's the bigger picture here?
Two things. One is that generally this year has been a bad year for any integration efforts globally. There is a wave of nationalism sweeping around the world, and it's a big threat for globalization. And in a global world where nationalities mean less and interests of trade and things that unite us mean more, it's becoming a major problem. So when you come to the East African region, there is a history of breaking up, which the doctor has well elucidated. Now, when you look at what is happening right now, before I came in, I called a good friend of mine who's been married for 27 years. I asked him, what keeps your marriage together?
Yeah.
And the answer was, we've invested so much in the last 27 years that when the idea of thinking about divorce...
You think about that loss.
Yes, you think about that loss.
Yeah.
So for all the years that this regional integration project has been around, I don't think countries or member states have invested so much into it in that it doesn't mean much.
So breaking up is so easy.
So breaking up is easy. So, and we can't risk, building a reputation of a region that makes up to break up, which seems to be the case if you analyze the current trend.
Right.
So there are issues we have to say, but I think the biggest problem before you break off is that I think historically member states have enjoyed competing against each other than winning together.
All right, let's bring in Professor Wanyama. If you can hear me, Professor, thank you so much, first of all, for accepting to make time to be with us here on In Focus in Rwanda. I want to read your thoughts, first of all. When you sit in that class, when you're teaching regional integration, and you touch on the issue of the current state of affairs on East African community when it comes to East African community, what do you tell your class? I want to read your thoughts on the current state of affairs on the East African community integration process, first of all.
Yes, of course, we have a challenge in the which all the and say that but the EAC most times of this year has been on audit.
Professor, let me just cut you short so that we can fix that. Try not to move around so that the signal is more stable. Let's try and fix that, and then we come back to you. Kindly just stay with us, Professor Dr. Kayumba, when we're still fixing the prof's video there. I want to hear from you, because people have been saying that if the European Union can have issues, then who are we in EAC, just 6 countries that are just emerging economies, not have issues? I want to read your thoughts on what you think about these thoughts by people who just downplay this and say, even us, we can always have issues, and so what?
I think that is a fair observation. Mm-hmm. But looking at where East African community is now and where the European Union is, yeah. The relationship is because both of them call themselves communities. Mm. What EAC has achieved is only to have written documents and to have aspirations and a few freedom of movements and businesses here and there. Remember, the way they stuff, what made the European Union become a community does not exist in East Africa. And what is that? 3 things. Number one, it was the idea that if Europe did not come together, Europe would cease to exist. It was, they had an existential threat, a security threat that made them unite after World War II. Mm. Here in East Africa, nations do not have an existential threat to exist. Therefore, to say that because EAC, the European Union has troubles today due to populism and rising nationalism is the same as we have here is not true, because the European Union has achieved to a certain level integration that we don't have. Number 2, European Union at the time, they also agreed on key fundamental values that each and every member state should agree on. For example, communities become communities like the European Union if they have, for example, the minimum of democracy. Yeah. Say that you cannot, for example, steal votes. You cannot increase your mandate when the mandate you are given is running out. But here in East Africa, in the East African community, although we have these in documents, yeah, they are the ones that have historically, since even in 1977, the East African community broke down, disintegrated because of internal democratic challenges in countries like Uganda, when Amin had a military coup. Now, we're also having a very big problem within the East African community, because in 2015, President Nkurunziza said after the second term said he wanted a third one.
Yeah.
But what do the values of the East African community do? And also that also relates to, because a community can even probably decide that maybe if it is not democracy, we have agreed to be dictators. If they agreed, all of them agreed that dictatorship is allowed, then we wouldn't be having this problem we have today emanating from Burundi, because the other 6 members would have said we have agreed that dictatorship is allowed. Yeah. Therefore, to say that the challenges the East African community is facing is the same as the European Union is not true. Finally, yes, the idea of identity. He was also talking about, because community means to share an identity. Ask yourself, I have been following Brexit debate that is going on in the European Union. I have been following protests in France, nationalist demonstrations in Italy. But all these people call them Europeans. Yeah. Do East Africans call themselves East Africans? Even the leaders. Yeah. Even the leaders. Yeah. Because apart from this security challenge we have today, the other big challenge that East Africa has always had, it is the idea of we have a community of East Africans, but I can see Rwandans sometimes are arrested and deported from Tanzania. Now Rwanda has issues with Uganda because some Rwandans are arrested there. The other day I had issues of Uganda. So if we had one identity, if we regarded ourselves as East Africans, we would not be doing such things to each other. So the European Union, although now the European identity is being challenged, yeah, at least they have it. Yeah. There is that contestation, but we don't have that. Yeah. I have not even heard our leaders, all these leaders, call themselves East Africans. Yes, they give big speeches, talk about infrastructure, talk about integration, yeah, but I have not seen them give speeches in Uganda, in Kenya, and say we are East Africans. Yeah. If they were promoting that identity, then you would say the challenge Europe is facing is the same as we are facing here. We don't have those fundamental 3 elements that, at least to a certain extent, Europe has achieved. Europe with that. Ken, I think what Professor is actually bringing or alluding to is what we've read from the Twitter feeds that I just read in the beginning of this conversation. People saying that our leaders seem to be the problem. They are the thorn in our... And what they say is that this East African integration process was supposed to be for the people, but it seems to have been hijacked by the leaders who, whatever they feel like, personal interest is what goes. Mm. How do we take this back as citizens of EAC?
Yeah, they are right. And you see, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, yeah, our expectations in the East African community and the integration fruits and cakes that were promised, we had our expectations were very high. Yes. You get? Yes. So right now, when we as a people, as East Africans, when we see what is happening, the heartbreak is reasonable. Mm. It's justifiable to feel the way we feel, because the promises of 5 years ago are not seeming to be showing up. Yeah. The problem is that it's not even, you see, Eugene, the question is, when 2 politicians are having a fight, who should stand in between them to talk to them? It shouldn't be another politician, because that politician will also be probably biased. It should be in many developed countries when, the politics is wrong, people with an interest in the economy are going to put their foot on the table and say, guys, your politics is killing business. So in this case... So the question is, where is the private sector in the East African community? Yeah.
They have a business council, East African Business Council.
They are quiet. They should be the ones to come in and say, guys, look, there's so much to lose if we continue like this because of ABCD. Private sector federation for Rwanda, for example, should be tabling numbers and say the current scuffles and bad blood is costing us this. We need to look at the actual impact of not doing the right thing. Yeah. As soon as we don't do that, unless we do that, we're going to continue seeing this. And for me, I really want the private sector to step up and exercise leadership and come in and do, in developed countries, this term, lobbyists. Yeah. They are a big deal. If you bring a political policy and we've analyzed it and we think it's going to hurt a lot of interests, we'll come in, we'll negotiate, we'll talk. It's not even a matter of diplomats. I think diplomacy as it is currently being practiced needs a disruptor. You know, we need probably people who can practice diplomacy in a different way. For example, come out right now, show face, and tell us what is going on.
Yeah, show face. And
let
tell
me
us
add
what's going on. Yes.
another point to what he's saying. The idea of East Africa not being, the East African Community not being based on the citizens, and therefore whenever leaders squabble and the community has a challenge, is also one of the main challenges the European Union is facing. Because while at the top they manage to integrate, at the bureaucratic level they manage to integrate, within the 28 member states, now 27 with the UK wanting to get out, the citizens have not been integrated, and whenever they have economic challenges in individual states, they start some nationalist politicians, populist politicians, start telling them that the problem is Brussels. The problem is the European Union. The problem that because you don't have a job if you are a UK citizen because maybe the Irish have come here, or you don't have a job because immigrants have come here. So that is the problem even this community we share with them.
But Doctor, looking at all the efforts that have been put, all the meetings, the counter-signings of all the protocols that we've signed from the day the East African community, the current one, actually took shape, are we just going to throw this baby with the bath?
Yeah, but they're just papers. They're just documents.
They're just documents.
There's no foundation.
There's no foundation.
You see, let me give you an example. When this whole debate in UK was going on, you know, May trying to negotiate Mesa divorce from the EU, companies are already shifting headquarters. You know, car manufacturing companies and everyone, they're shifting, moving from London to other places that will still tap into the EU market.
So let's flip that onto the EAC perspective.
So when you come here, that's why I started from. That our marriage, we haven't invested in it so much that we don't care if it breaks down. And for me, that's where we need to start looking.
Actually, the biggest challenge in the European Union now, the biggest problem with UK, it is that it will suffer terrible economic consequences if it got out without a deal. Why? Because the economy of the European Union is deeply integrated, because the institutions in these different countries are deeply intertwined, because the security arrangements are deeply connected. Here in East Africa, if any state decided
to move away,
to get out, they would almost win nothing. That is why Burundi closed the borders. You no longer see buses moving from Uganda, from Kenya and Burundi does not care. How many banks, for example, from Burundi are connected to the banks here? Are connected to banks here in Kenya? Not just that they move money around, but they're also connected in matters of legislation. How many military chiefs in these countries share intelligence on a trust basis? Because even the 6 African EAC countries say they have security challenges. Burundi just named Rwanda as an enemy, that not a partner state. So in the European Union, you cannot have a state. There is no single state that can say any member of the European Union is
the enemy of the other.
Is an enemy. So here in the South African community, what we have achieved is to have documents and to call ourselves a community. But the laws, the institutions, and the way we do things are not the same. That is why you still have citizens from Rwanda or from Kenya. If they want to go, say, to South Sudan or do business, then they have problems. In EU, they have what they call Schengen, you know.
But someone will say these are baby steps, baby steps. We'll always have these issues.
So let us therefore say what we have.
Judging,
we have taken baby steps. And these baby steps are also being driven by individuals who ideologically, these leaders who I believe ideologically have not developed the East African identity. Because if these leaders had an East African identity, I believe all of them still see themselves as Ugandans, Kenyans, Rwandese, Burundians, South Sudan, until they develop that ideological understanding, they cannot move forward. And if you look at the history of the East African community, the first community was formed by individuals who, in their generation, shared the independence aspirations and the ideological fight against colonialism. If you look at Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, if you look at Milton Obote in Uganda, if you look at Nyerere, ideologically, they believed that to have that community of purpose built on the identity of East Africa, not tribal. They managed to move forward. Then when you had a semi-literate leader coming up in Uganda called Field Marshal Idi Amin Dada, who does not share this ideological understanding, then the thing crumbles. And then Nyerere is asking him, we do not entertain coups. Then he said, no, you are hiding people who are attempting to overthrow my. Even in 2000, when it was revived, if you look at the people who revived it, are people who come from a certain generation. If you look at the time it was in Kenya, you had Mike Kibaki. Yes. Mike Kibaki had got his education in Makerere University. At the time, Museveni was also studying in Dar es Salaam. And
but you see the problem with that analysis, and I really appreciate
but
it.
But at the moment, if you see the challenges we have, I think they still have an ideological disconnect. I also think there is a little bit of parochialism, provincialism. Some leaders who I think treat themselves or see their worldview is a lot of a village.
That was the reason why I asked, should we start a hashtag, take back our EAC, I mean, as citizens, from these leaders who you say and who you describe in that manner? How do citizens who believed and had those aspirations when these promises were being made, these announcements were being made, and felt that, wow, finally I can cross the border from Kenya to Rwanda using an ID, and I still want to do that. How do they take back this from the leaders who are in the sense that...
which is why I was saying the frame of analysis that focuses on a generation of past leaders is also, it has its limitations. Because you see, people are not going to be there forever. Meaning that the time you are around, the time you're in position, you should be able to entrench an ideology so that it passes around to be shared by all generations. You get? Because the point is, when you leave, what will happen? And I've argued about this point before. I think 2 years ago, or 3, when you remember what we called in the media the coalition of the willing, I wrote and said that what we need to do right now is to exploit this wave of political will so that we do as much as possible before it passes. Because that is the history. We've always had these moments when things are so good, they flourish, and then when changes appear in member countries, you go back. Which is why I have a problem with what we call baby steps. I think our baby steps for East African region are stunted. Or probably they have polio. Because they are not moving fast enough. They should be running. You get?
Perfect. Let's see if we have Professor Wanyama one more time. Let's see. Professor Wanyama, if you can hear me loud and clear. Sitting in this room here, I mean, I feel demoralized right now when it comes to the issue of EAC. Tell me, is there hope? Is there hope from your perspective as far as the regional integration is concerned in the EAC?
Of course, there's reason to be demoralized. And the heads seem to be enough because of our open procedure in the EAC. And that is what happened last summit. That's why it had to be, because decisions are made by consensus, not at the table. We cannot. Yes, there's reason to be concerned. But those heads of as the solution to the challenge that we have. The EAC has brought us many benefits, but we need also to appreciate this move and about moving political direction and community, just moving goods. These problems must be addressed problem internal. We cannot talk about. These are issues that we must deal with. In fact, this takes us back to the enlargement of the EAC. That if we must enlarge the EAC, we must bring in new members. No, we have the capacity to address the problem. If we cannot address the problem that we are coming in, then there's no need to enlarge.
Okay.
So we need to address this matter.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Wanyama. We'll try one more time again. Thank you for that. We just picked a few lines. I think he sounds a bit optimistic that there's movement.
He seems to have a problem with, he says we keep adding new members.
Yes.
But you see, actually, one of the biggest problems we're having right now is that our community is so small in that when there's a problem between, two members, the whole thing breaks down. Compare that to, the situation of EU, 28, 29 members. Yeah. If I'm quarreling with Dr. Kayumba, the rest of the people,
they continue doing business.
We continue doing business, but ours is so small that it should be almost operating at flawless status. But because that can't be counted on forever, it's important to build strong bilateral relations because it's from strong bilateral relations that countries can actually count on building a strong integrated bloc.
Yeah.
Now, this is where the diplomats come in. We have Rwandan diplomats, I believe, in Burundi, and we have Burundian diplomats here. They need to fix the bilateral relations. Ugandan diplomats in Rwanda, Rwandan diplomats in Uganda, they need to fix the bilateral, Kenyan diplomats in, so that when bilateral relations are doing well, these now act as the pillars of a strong integrated community. Without that, we'll always be walking on wobbly legs.
Right. Professor Kayumba, as I go to read the tweets that are actually coming through thick and fast, renowned writer and columnist Charles Onyango Obo just actually suggested that there's no problem dropping Burundi and then look for other members like Ethiopia, Somalia to join us, and probably Burundi would do fine with DRC and other economic blocs, and probably in future, if they feel like they want to remarry, they can always come back. I want to read your thoughts on that particular analysis by Obo.
I think that the problem, what the East African leaders should do is to solve the Burundi problem. Because it is something that they agreed to. It is the East African community that helped Burundi rebuild and reconcile after the war in 2005. So for me, I don't think that letting Burundi go will solve the problem, because the problem is not just Burundi.
Yeah.
But Burundi's problem the problem Burundi has now could come from any of the member states. Does it mean that if another member state, for example, has a similar problem that Burundi has now, an internal problem, an internal political problem that they are trying to export elsewhere, does it mean that every member state that has that internal problem
is dropped?
I think what the EAC should do is to have minimum values on which each and every member state should follow. And in the case of Burundi, it is adhering to the constitution. That if the constitution says 2 terms, no more, and people do not want that kind of leader, then the leader is removed. But let me also say 2 other things. Ken was saying that it seems that the EAC is stunted. I don't really think that EAC should be seen in that light, because remember, EAC started officially in 2000. The other day, it's just 18 years. Rwanda and Burundi joined in 2007, just 11 years ago. So you cannot compare the lifespan of a community. Remember, a community
should be past baby
steps. Is a community whereby, for example, me as a Rwandese should be sharing an identity with a Kenyan, Ugandan. That takes time. So you cannot compare the East African community to the European Union. Yeah. The European Union has achieved whatever it has achieved in more than 6 decades. Yeah. So therefore we cannot say, even a person...
So this is normal. Whatever is going on right now is normal.
Even an 18-year-old kid is still a kid.
But
so
we
for
can't
me,
call
I
them
think
baby steps at that level.
So for me, I
as
think
you rebuttal,
Yeah.
also share your thoughts on that idea that probably it's time to let Burundi go and probably get new members, new members like
it's not
Ethiopia.
a sustainable solution,
yeah.
really. It's not sustainable because some of the challenges Burundi has in governance, you'll find them elsewhere. So, you know, we pretty much need each other, and that's why I said we need to get used to the fact that we need to work towards winning together than winning against each other. And for me, when we let Burundi go, it's like abandoning a problem in our neighborhood. Look, the proximity from Burundi, between Burundi and Rwanda is so close. The proximity between DRC and Rwanda is so close in that even if you let these countries go, they will always be connected to you. So what happens there will ultimately affect your welfare in here. And that's the challenge, that's the predicament Rwanda finds itself in. You know, and I will tell you, if you have time, that for me, you started reading kind of frustrations from the Rwandan government from the time we even decided to merge the East African ministry to the Ministry of Commerce. You know, because I remember the previous minister who is now representing us at the UN, very passionate. I covered her. I was a journalist at the New Times then. She was so passionate, but you could see that Rwanda wanted to provide some kind of leadership, and we ran things the way we were running them here very fast, as opposed to baby steps taking time. But we got to a time when probably these frustrations came, and the moment we merged these ministries, for me, I talked to myself then and I said, this is a big deal. Because it actually means that when you read it from the Rwandan perspective, there are deeper things that we probably are not seeing on the outside. And I think right now, it's what we are seeing right now. This is not a new story. It has been a developing story for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look at what we have right here as far as developing tweets. Jean-Claude says, thanks a lot for the ideas being shared on panel. Are you saying that we as EAC citizens, we have fallen in a trap of bad leadership? Do the issues really concern entire countries or simply personality clashes among our leaders? Professor, you want to take this? Jean-Claude wants an answer on that.
I think it is a combination of personality clashes between some of the leaders. Yeah. But also, it is also a problem of the failure to speak truth to fellow leaders. Because I personally believe, if EAC leaders had told President Nkurunziza the truth at the time the problem erupted in April 2015, that the third term is the problem, it is being fought by the citizens, it is against the Arusha peace process. If they spoke with one voice, we wouldn't be having this problem now, which is also a problem of leadership. Yeah. Which is also a
leadership from the EAC.
Yes, because you see, the problem there is who in East Africa would have the perfect moral authority to talk truth to Nkurunziza?
It is not about perfect moral authority.
Yeah. It's about what?
It is about the legal part of it, because they were saying by Arusha codes, the 2 terms were only allowed. Secondly, people were protesting against this. There was violence against the 3rd term.
But then there is something here that President Paul Kagame himself did say. Any integration, I quote, any integration effort requires give and take. Every country has its own sovereignty. But when you choose integration, you understand that some of it will be ceded. People come together and create something that is bigger than just the sovereignty of each country. Let's talk about, or each entity rather. Let's talk a bit about that part of sovereignty. And when does a country say that I'm ceding this and I'm not ceding this other one? Because this has been the issue every time. If a country wants to intervene on the other country, they'll always tell you that is their problem. They will deal with that as their as individual countries.
It goes back to the metaphor I wanted to use of a marriage and a divorce. You know, I know I'm yet to get married, but I know that when you're getting into this
could be good signs, eh? Yes.
That you actually
lessons.
You actually given options. You know, you could say we're going to share property. We could, you know, there are things you can share. there are things you say, okay, in case we have such a problem, this is how we'll deal with it. It's all in the foundational setup of the East African region and how we intended to integrate.
Yeah.
If we didn't define and foresee such challenges, then I don't think we did a good job in building the foundation on which we now want to build the walls of the East African community. Yeah. Because what the President Paul Kagame is talking about is the truth. Yeah. But you see, the question is, within the framework of the East African community, does the template on which we are basing to build this so-called, integrated community, does it address such issues? Do we know what to do when we have differences like this? If we don't, then we made a mistake at the time we were building a foundation. Yeah. If you're building a 10-story building and the foundation is weak, it doesn't matter how tall you go, it will crumble. It will
crumble down. So the issue was the foundation. Let's take here Etienne, who actually says that EAC is a failed community among others. Single currency policy, one identity card, free movement of citizens, marketplace is actually closed. This region is in a total conflict. This is what Etienne says. I don't know if you agree. Let's take a look at another one very quickly. There's another one here from Mwangala, who says imaginary enmity, an aligned policy implementation by member states and ideological differences are what will lead to the collapse of the EAC. One more from Mugabo here, who says, why are we dilly-dallying around the issues? It's as if all member states share equal blame. Who are we talking about specifically? It's self-evident truths that both Uganda and Burundi either don't want or are not ready. Do you agree?
Yeah, yes and no.
Somehow.
No, it goes back to the other question, which is, I think, is the most fundamental.
Yeah.
The question of sovereignty.
Yeah.
You cannot have a community that does not share sovereignty.
Yeah.
Because once you say you have that is even why, for example, UK cannot easily go away from this community.
Yeah.
Because it has ceded part of its sovereignty
to the marriage,
to the community, to the marriage. So here in our community, in the East African community, I also saw this idea of sovereignty being raised by Burundi, that it has its internal affairs that should not be infringed on. Doing so is, and of course, President Museveni, who is the chairperson of this community at the moment, said no, sovereignty. Actually, when the East African community went into Burundi in the 90s to help them solve the disagreements and the war, you had accepted for us to come and be part of the solution. Therefore, you cannot
choose when you accept us to come
and when you throw us.
Yes.
And that is what even President Kagame was saying. Yeah. A community, you have to be willing to give something if you want to take something. Yeah. So therefore, there must be certain things that are shared. And in this case, if you look at the documents that on which the community is based on, there is also the issue of conflict resolution, solving challenges within member states. There is also written ideas on democracy and do's and don'ts with regard to democracy.
And Agutamba said
so
that it's all on
therefore,
paper. This is what he feels.
The problem, therefore, we have, it is not that these leaders do not have these documents or do not know what is in these documents. The problem is the courage to say we agreed and signed on this pact. So you are being undemocratic. Therefore, we call you to, we sanction you. That is what is the big problem.
Right.
And the other problem, of course, has to do with accusations of aiding dissidents that fight each other's governments. Again, within these documents, it is stated that that is unacceptable. And so, again, they are not talking what they agreed,
as
what they signed.
As a block.
Yeah, so the problem is not that there are no foundational ideas. The problem, the foundational ideas are not implemented.
Right. Very quickly, another one, a basket of worries. Free movement of citizens is a failed deal. Marketplace is closed. Conflict tensions. EAC citizens are like cats and dogs. I don't know who is the cat and who is the dog in that sense. But in this particular case, I just want us to take a very short break. When we come back, we'll see again if we can be able to reach out to Professor Wanyama and be able to bring him on board. We're going to take a very short break right now. So stay with us. Keep tweeting. Hashtag, as always, is in focus RW. Mabel, I'm here. I'm speaking from here. I don't know if you can see me. Yes, thank you. So, right, we're going to take a very short break. And, of course, we'll be coming back. Keep tweeting. Hashtag in focus RW. We'd love to read your thoughts and talk to you and move this conversation forward on the other side of the break. So stay with us. All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for still being with us on In Focus. Of course, we are talking about the issue of the East African Community integration process. You've been sending your thoughts and we'll still want to read more of them. What is your take on the current state of affairs when it comes to East African Community issues? We still have Professor Wanyama with us. If, Professor, you can hear me, let's try one more time. I hope the sound quality will be good this time. I want to read your thoughts on... Do you think it's doom and gloom now? I mean, what do we do from here? Is this something we can pick up and fix and get back on track as to how we were before, according to those who think that before things were better than they are today?
No, we have a duty to the people, and we must fix this. And our heads of state are the solution to this. They should be able to. International relations of everyday relations. So we cannot say everything has come to an end because of this problem. One sort to just make it stronger. And my friend there, I mentioned that enlargement is not good. No, enlargement is important. Bigger EAC, we need a stronger EAC. What we need is that we also have an EAC that has strong institutions that are able to address issues, conflict such as this, because we need to address this issue, and we need to the rules and address and review those rules so that problems come up, we address them. So yes, we have to fix the EAC, and I'm sure our leaders will be able to solve the current problem.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Professor Wanyama, there, for making time to talk to us. Very optimistic there, giving us a bit of hope right there. Our leaders have what it takes to actually fix the EAC. And I want to hear from you, probably as we plan to start leaving this place. How then, probably looking ahead of the 27th, Heads of State Summit as it comes closer, what sort of expectations would you be expecting? What sort of things probably in that room? I'm sure it will be a closed-door meeting. Professor Kayumba, what sort of conversation are you expecting in that particular meeting then?
I think if it doesn't flop again, I think it will be a very difficult conversation. It will be a very difficult conversation because there has been some words exchanged, and probably there might be, I expect a conversation based on truth, because I don't think that there is anything that is not known now when they meet, because everything was, as if you read those letters, everything is laid out in those letters, where the real problem is. Because Burundi thinks the problem they have is externally generated. And President Museveni is saying, no, the problem is not externally generated, it is internally generated, and we intervened because we are not encroaching on your sovereignty, but we have a right that we get from being the guarantors of the Arusha peace process. And for me, I think really, if you solve that problem of Burundi, because it is one of the major challenges the community is facing, then you are remaining with 2 or 3 other problems. One is a problem that Rwanda has been having with Uganda, because you know also Uganda and Rwanda also Rwanda has been accusing Uganda of Rwandese abducted in Uganda, imprisoned, all these things. Then you also have the challenge of Burundi accusing Rwanda of harboring people who plotted the coup. And finally, you also have a problem that Uganda has with Kenya, you know, sugar
issues.
Then Kenya has a challenge with Tanzania,
well.
you know, arresting. I didn't know that cows can be arrested.
And chickens.
Even
chicks,
chicken, chicks, all these things. So, if this could be resolved, then I think...
get back on track.
But I think the primary one, the main one, it is the problem in Burundi and the problem between Rwanda and Uganda.
Right. Sir Ken, I mean, people are a bit confused here. Some people say that Uganda and Burundi seem to be on the same page when it comes to whatever is going on within the EAC. But then again, you're reading that letter from President Museveni of Uganda, you see him clearly not amused at all with the Burundian leader. And people are a bit confused here. What's really going on? Your analysis here.
You see, Eugene, for me, I'm deliberately going to refuse to focus the problem on Burundi and look at the entire region as probably having multiple health problems from several bilateral relations. And this is what I said. Like the doctor here just pointed out, if you analyze closely, you'll find that each country has an issue with the other one. You get. So even in this meeting they are going to have, you would only wish that maybe there is an independent chief whip, you know, to bring these guys, you know, so that somebody, because if I'm Rwanda, I'm not going to be probably happy to see Uganda, whom I'm currently having problems with, trying to be the, you know, the mediator. So again, now you have to look at it from the East African, me, and the other East African out there who is not in any position of power. What I would do, what is safer to do right now, is to lower our expectations in the EAC, so that if anything good happens, we are pleasantly surprised. Otherwise, I can only applaud people like Trademark East Africa, who are keeping the spirit going, you know, investing in, you know, integration projects, you know, building bridges here and there. This is what we want. This is the conversation we need. And that's why I was saying that the only person I would be comfortable with to come and talk to these politicians as they squabble are the lobbyists from the private sector, people who are actually investing in cross-border business and multilateral, I mean, you know, multinational brands. These are people who probably will actually cause, because all these governments want tax revenue. All these governments want job creation. All these governments want, you know, fast economic growth. And you can only get these from investment. And these are investors in the private sector who are actually getting hurt as all this political squabbling goes on. So they have to be the ones to step up to actually talk sense to our politicians.
Right. In closing now, there's been this argument that probably we are now beyond just these regional blocks and regional economic communities. We're now thinking African continental free trade area, man.
You don't jump. You don't jump. You don't jump.
So why bother with just 6? Let's now go Africa.
You see, like I said, to build a strong integration, you start from bilateral relations, because these are the pillars of an integrated bloc. You get. But the biggest problem, like I said in the beginning, globally, not just for the EAC, is this whole wave of nationalism. That politics, we have to look at it and analyze it. It's a danger.
It's a danger. Dr. Kayumba, in closing, same question.
These
regional economic blocks are just going to be collapsed, and we have one that will now focus on Africa. Is this what you see?
I think if, for example, you had the whole of Africa agreeing, or most of them agreeing, still we would get benefits from this arrangement. For me, therefore, the problem is not whether we should start from this regionalism. Then after it is strengthened, then we go continental. I think we can build them together. Concurrently, we can build them together. But also, let me also say finally,
very briefly,
finally, that we should. I really think that it is important to focus on the immediate challenges the community faces, and then also address the root causes of the challenges. Because if we don't address the immediate challenges and therefore dissect them individual by individual, because if we start saying that the whole of East Africa has problems, then we would end up solving none of these problems. But there are specific challenges the community faces, like the Burundi problem, where the Burundi disagreed, like the Rwanda-Uganda problem.
We must fix that.
Those ones must be fixed. Then we go back to the foundational root causes that have to do with hyper-nationalism, whereby we can't trade with each other correctly, and also the idea of how much sovereignty these countries want to give up, because this also seems to be raising
an issue. Thank you so much, Honors. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for making time to be on this particular conversation. On behalf of Dr. Wanyama as well, thank you so much for making time. I know in Kenya right now it's going to about 11, and of course we want to say thank you for actually making time. Although the line was not that perfect, we'll try this again next time. Thank you so much, Prof, for making time. And of course, for those of you who've been tweeting, Etienne comes back, says better sit together and arrange the conflicts. This region came to an end due to political interest. The heads of state, should look back where they were and plan the future for the sake of lay people. Of course, that's very powerful. And of course, Rugamba says what is needed is to get back to the reasons that forced us to have the community back. Otherwise, it will be useless to push mountains that can't move, okay? And finally, Etienne says what the East Africa needs is a savior. That savior could be you, the citizen watching this. What role are you playing to actually push your leaders to deliver on their commitments as far as integration is concerned? As private sector bodies, you've also been challenged. I hope you've taken that challenge up. We'll see you again next time, same place, same time. As always, I'm Eugene Adangwe, signing off.
Rwiza